What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another review. This time we'll be taking a look at Candyman, Farewell to the Flesh, sequel to the first movie, directed by Bill Condon. Okay, I'm going to make this review as short as I possibly can. I overall really enjoyed the second Candyman movie. It's not as good as the first movie, but on its own, this is actually a passable and decent sequel. This adds to the Candyman mythology. We actually find out what Candyman's real name is, which is Daniel Robitaille. This movie does some good things, but it also does things that I find highly questionable. Uh, Particularly with how they kind of sort of retcon Candyman's character a little bit. Something that I don't really agree with, and I like it the better how it was kind of handled better in the first movie. Again, we get a little backstory, more backstory gets filled in with Candyman. We find out that he was actually born in Louisiana to a free slave. I don't like that, to be honest with you. I like the idea of Candyman being born into in the first movie, it said that he was born into a family of considerable wealth. I would have liked if they would have maintained that and not slightly retcon it by adding the slave thing. Because to me, I think it's much more sad when a man who was not born a slave is mistreated in the era in the 1800s. Because no matter what your position is in society, whether you're down here or over there, because of the color of your skin, you're going to face that racial prejudice. So I thought it would, I think, to me personally, I think it's much more tragic. Candyman coming from wealth, but still having to face persecution. To me, I think to me that is more tragic than him being born to a free slave. I think it's a cop out, and that's a cheap way to go. So to me, that's a big strike with the addition to Candyman's story, just by adding that one little asterisk. Completely, just it doesn't ruin it, but it kind of makes it typical. Is what I'm trying to get at. So I didn't like how they added that to the backstory. Uh, then you got this whole thing of Candyman's descendants now trying to fight him and end his curse. I get it. I'm just not 100% sold on it. I think it was kind of just like, oh, really? The story for this movie is pretty much Candyman's descendants trying to stop him by breaking a mirror. You know, like I know, but again, it plays into the whole fact of Candyman being. We have you standing in front of a mirror and saying Candyman's name, and that's what makes him appear. So I understand how his soul is trapped in a mirror. So I get that actually, but when you actually try to make that into a plot point of that being the source of his destruction, it's akin to how Freddy Krueger dies in Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4. When the evil sees itself, that's when it gets destroyed type deal, which is kind of hokey, if you ask me. But kind of hokey. So yeah, those are my big criticisms towards this movie. But other than that, I think this movie is very solidly made. Once again, Tony Todd puts on an outstanding performance. I actually like his performance in this movie a little bit more because he gets to show a little bit more emotion, a little bit more range. And to me, my best and of course it's all very very nuanced. But to me, my best scene is where he sees a portrait of Caroline, the woman he was in love with, and the woman that pretty much caused him to lose his life and lose his family in a way. He glimpses a small picture of Caroline, a painting, and just by his facial expressions, the the human side of Candyman kind of bleed out, and it causes him to have a little tantrum when he rips the portrait in half. I love that scene because it's very nuanced and it adds a lot to Candyman. Like he's still a man within that evil spirit. The man he used to be is in there. It's in there, but it's very but the evil side of him has consumed him. But that small good part, that small human side of him is still trapped within inside that evil soul. And I like that scene a lot. It adds a lot to Candyman as a character in general. Uh, Even though I'm not crazy about the whole descendant storyline of this movie, I do like the actors. This movie has Veronica Cartwright, who you would know from the original Alien movie. You have Kelly Rowan. They do a good job. You also have a supporting cast that includes Bill Nunn, who plays a preacher of a son who has run away, and Bill Nunn did fine. I like the whole aesthetic of this movie taking place during Mardi Gras. It adds to this movie from an atmosphere standpoint. I like Bill Condon's direction, though I am not crazy about the 175,000 jump scares he puts in this movie. This movie is jump scare overload. You get one jump scare, then 5 seconds later, you get another jump scare. After a while, that gets very tedious to sit through because something's happening and then a jump scare happens and then it goes back to what was going on and then another jump scare happens 10 seconds later. So the jump scares in this movie are really, really overdone. And to me, it kind of undercuts those legitimate good scares that this movie does possess, but those get undercut because of these 7,000 these 7,000 jump scares that kind of overshadow it. So that's another big problem I have with this movie. But aesthetically, this movie is well made, it's well shot, it's got good cinematography, got good solid acting. Tony Todd once again does a fantastic performance, and I like the overall look of Candyman in this movie as opposed to how he looked in the original movie. Though I like both looks, don't get me wrong, I love both looks, but I think I like his look in part 2 better because in part 1, when you break it down, the guy looks like a pimp with that pimp coat on. At least in this movie, he looks more refined, more regal, and it adds a lot more to his intimidating stature as a villain in part 2, that is. So yeah, those are just my brief, quick thoughts on Candyman Farewell to the Flesh. Overall, I'm going to give it a 6.5 out of 10. It's a good, solid sequel. Not as good as the original movie, but still good for what it has to offer. Anyway, those are my thoughts on Candyman Farewell to the Flesh. Let me know yours in the comment sections down below. Also, if you guys want to see my review of the original movie, I will put the link in both the description box and in the comment sections down below. Like the video and subscribe, and I'll check you back next time for more.